Hey folks, Colin here from Something's Recording, and today I'm going to show you the secret to a big drum sound in a small room. We're going to use impulse responses to give our drums the power they need to compete. To open, let me pull out the impulse response, and I will show you the dry drums as they sit in the room. So obviously these drums are fully mixed, but we're going to take out the element that's going to give our drums the bigness that they don't have being recorded in a small room. So I'll show you the drums without that, and then I'll show you the room track that we do have going. This is just a mono room. It's actually just the vocal mic that's in our drum booth. So I'll show you what the room sounds like on its own realistically. So here's the finished drums without the impulse response added in. You can really hear the depth, and it gives the drums a little bit more vibe when we throw the reverb impulse response in. It helps them sit in the track a little bit better. So I'm going to do the same thing one more time, except I'll solo the drums up this time. So it makes our drums bigger, it gives them a little bit more width, and it helps our snare and our toms have a little bit more length and a little bit more impact to them. So let's break this down. Actually, let me show you the actual room. So this is the mono room. Like I said, it's the vocal mic that's in our drum booth. I'll show you this by itself so you can hear what the room actually sounds like, and I'll take the EQ off too. So it's a pretty tight, pretty dead sounding room. That is the way I actually prefer to work. I prefer to work in a dead room so I can add any kind of ambience I need later. Sometimes it's hard if you want a dead sound to get that if you're working in, like a big live room or something. It's hard to get rid of ambience. It's easy to add ambience. That's why I like working in a smaller room like we have here in the studio. We could pull them out here. I keep them in the drum booth. So let me break down this impulse response for you. So what this is we're using the Open Air plugin inside of Studio One. So this is Reverb Impulse Response Loader, and we're pulling up Studio B. It's one of the room impulse responses in the Bricasti reverb. So I got these off of Line. I'm not sure. I might have the link. If I have the link, I'll put it down in the description. Otherwise, you can Google it. I'm pretty sure it's Simplicity. That is the Bricasti reverb impulse responses. This is Rooms, Studio B, and let me show you what that sounds like by itself. I'll pull off the two plugins that I do have on it. It's an EQ and a binaural pan to narrow it up a little bit. Here's the reverb by itself. So you can hear our kick drum sounds massive, and it's very wide. So we're going to do a couple things to take care of that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to throw this EQ on, and we're going to roll off everything below 200. So we want our low end coming from a single source. So we don't want that blowing up our reverb. So we're going to roll off everything below 200. So our low end mainly comes from our kick mics. It's not coming through our reverb. It's not blowing up our sound. And I'm going to roll off a little bit of the high end so it's not so airy, because realistically you're not going to get that kind of air in a room. That's just the high end we have from these mics coming through on this reverb. So that's that. Let me play you that. So sounding a little bit more like an actual stereo room mic. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to use this binaural pan plugin to narrow up the mics a little bit, or to narrow up the reverb impulse response a little bit. So it was a little bit too wide for me, and when I kicked it in with the rest of the drums, it sounded pretty unnatural. It sounded too wide, it sounded fake to me. So we're using this binaural pan to narrow it up and make it sound a little bit more like it was actually tracked with stereo mics inside of a bigger room. So let me play you that with the binaural pan in. Even though we're going for a bigger sound, in my ears, this helps to tighten up the reverb a little bit so it's not so messy. It helps to focus our low end and low mid information and keep them in the center. Otherwise, without it, we kind of have like the kick drum, it's really wide, and the low end on the snare is really wide, and I never liked that kind of thing in my reverb. I like to keep my reverbs a little bit more clean, and if I do have any kind of low-end information in, I do like to keep it in the middle. So this helps focus our low-mid energy while we still get some width from our stereo elements sending into it, like our overheads and the panning of our toms as well. Let me throw that back in with our whole drum mix, and I will A-B this EQ and the binaural pan. You can hear how that changes the effect it has on our drums. So you really hear the EQ on the kick drum. You hear so much low end come in from the kick drum when we pull that EQ off. That sounds terrible to me. And then the binaural pan, you really hear that effect on the snare. When I kick that off, the snare gets really forward and really widespread sounding. I don't want that, and I don't want to have to pull the impulse response back so we don't have that. I like the width it gives, oh, no, I'm sorry, not the width. I like the effect it gives, the reverb it gives, and the room sound it gives at this level. So we're just narrowing it up a little bit so it doesn't spread things out too much. We get some width from our stereo elements, like I said, our toms and our overheads, but it doesn't pan out our mono elements like our snare or our kick drum. So what we'll do is we'll walk through how I would put this into the mix. So this right here is built into my template. It's the open air reverb with the impulse response in it, and I dial it back to about 400 milliseconds, anywhere in the 500, 400 millisecond range, up into about 750 works pretty well for me, depending on how long and how big you want your reverb. This EQ is built into my template, as well as the binaural pan, because I use this Bricasti close sound on most of my drum mixes coming out of the back room there. What we do is after we get our mix set, I send the kick, the snare, the toms, and the overheads to this reverb so we get this sound. So we hear how those elements would react if they were sending into the room of this size. So after we send our kick level, so that's both kick mics, both snare mics, all of our tom mics, and our overheads, into our reverb, I usually start with the reverb all the way down, and I pull it up to somewhere where I like it. Then I go past and pull it back to see if I sit around the same area. So we'll start with it out, we'll pull it up. I'll even pull out the tambourine so we're hearing just our drums. By starting too low and going too far, you hear your two extremes. So you hear it too dry, and then you hear it too wet, where it gets a little bit muddy, a little bit messy sounding with too much reverb. And you can find that sweet spot right in the middle, where it gives you a little bit of width, it gives you that depth you want in the mix, and it helps give a little bit more impact to your toms and your snare without over exaggerating the low end on your kick drum. Just to finish up here, we'll put it back inside the mix, and I will A/B with and without the reverb impulse response one more time. Here we go. One single element to help our drums sound like they were tracked in a live room, help them sit in the track, give them a little bit more depth and a little bit more impact on things like our toms and our snare. I hope that was helpful for you if you want to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process and you want to learn to optimize your workflow, then I have a gift for you. This is my 7-step mixing checklist. You can download it using the link in the description below. It is a free resource that I want you to have. This will guide you through the mixing process step by step to help you get professional radio-ready mixes without the guesswork and without the hassle. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you in the next video.